Just fine. Just soda. Is he ready? Soda.
Ready?
Yes, I am.
Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for February 5th, 2019. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. At 6 o'clock p.m. this evening, we opened an executive session to talk under Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, and 2, to conduct strategic session contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We also went in session under Mass General Law, Chapter 214, 1B, Clause 26C, to discuss financial assistance for residents in need. On tonight's agenda, we have some meeting minutes to approve. For discussion items, we have appointments to various boards. We have a road race, funding for an EDC request, and then we're going to finish up our budget requests going on. So if somebody would like to make a motion for the minutes.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the regular session meeting minutes from November 13th, November 20th, December 4th, and December 18th, and also January 15th.
Second. That's unanimous action.
Okay. And also I'd like to make a motion that we approve the executive session meeting minutes for November 20th, December 4th, December 18th, and January 15th.
Second. That's unanimous action. Discussion item 4.1 is appointments to various boards. For the first one, we have appointments to the Electronic Voting Committee. At our last meeting, we appointed Michelle Antonelli and Steve Rackerton to the Electronic Voting Committee. Tonight, we have two additional applicants. I'm trying to see if I see them. I'd like to invite Lynn Haggerty and Al Holman forward, but now Lynn's here, so.
Good evening.
Second Lane.
Like we've done for every other board you have applied for. Something about yourself and
Something about myself.
why you want to be on the electronic voting.
35 years in living in the town of Upton. I want to be on the electronic voting committee to look and see if it would benefit us or not benefit us. I looked up some comps with the town clerk, and out of 33 meetings, we only have an average of 168 people. I'm hoping maybe we can get some more participation, and if it will benefit us. And that's why I want to be on the committee.
Any questions from either of you gentlemen?
Sounds great.
No.
I make a motion that we appoint Lynn Haggerty to the Electronic Voting Committee.
Second motion?
Unanimous action.
Thank you,
Very
gentlemen.
good. Thank you.
You guys want to appoint Al too?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Alfred Holman to the Electronic Voting Committee.
I second that.
It's unanimous action. So that's four candidates we have. I did talk to the moderator. He's not worried about an even versus an odd number, and he'd rather be more of a, doesn't want to be a participant in every meeting, rather be like an informational type person.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we can do too is we can certainly ask them for a recommendation, but I think the main thing is having clarity around what the pros and cons are, and if there are any risks, how we might mitigate those risks. If we were to do something with electronic voting, so we know sort of what the issues are that other towns have seen, ways that we might get around that, I think are important for the board to know, because I know that we want them to make a recommendation, but I think we also want to give the board flexibility to make a decision as well.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly a lot there, even with respect to the components, the cost, whether we would need outside help to actually run the meetings with these devices, so there's a lot to know there.
Yeah, and I'm happy with four, so we can get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and then maybe a different way to say it too is like I consider it an information gathering committee as opposed to a decision making committee.
Very good.
Very good. So, moving along, agenda item 4.12. The town also had one additional opening for Council on Aging. We received an application from Linda Sanders. I don't believe she's here. So if you guys want to make a motion?
Yeah, do you know Linda? I don't know.
I don't know, Mrs. Sanders.
Recommended.
She did.
From council, from
Okay.
Janet.
So I'll make a motion that we appoint Linda Sanders to the Council on Aging.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action. Our last appointment for the night is, at the last meeting, we received a report from the Economic Development Committee, and Chairman Gene Bernard asked us to appoint one alternate member since one of his members was going on an extended business trip. We advertised the position, and Mrs. Michelle Antonelli applied for it. I see her here. So,
Good evening.
South Street. Good evening.
Hi.
So I have a couple questions. I'm interested in serving with the Economic Development Committee. I think we need some definition around the role of an alternate member. Is it to serve only in the absence of a member that we know is going to go on extended vacation? Is it to serve in the absence of any member, act as a fifth member of the committee? I'm happy whichever way this all comes out, but I just think the committee deserves some clarity around how I would be serving in that capacity. I am interested in serving for two reasons. I think there's been some confusion, or at least I've had some confusion over sort of what role economic development has with downtown revitalization. I know that that was sort of an added scope or charter that was given to them after they were already formed, so I'm interested in sort of seeing how those correlate and providing some healthy skepticism so that the committee can address the questions that are coming in from the community in that way. And also, as you have been well aware, I'm very much invested in the needs of people that aren't always served, needs of people with physical, cognitive, visual, sensory impairments, not only in capacity of being able to access whatever economic development, but perhaps in the role of encouraging people to be employed in our community, to live in our community. Specifically, we had a great downtown revitalization. How would people who are not living in the center of town access, transportation-wise, and or the possibility if we have some multi-use facility multi-use business that we could have some dedicated housing so people are already in the area and they can access what's happening in the downtown and be part of the community.
I really can't answer your first question. I'm not sure if either of you guys have talked to Gene about the role.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing I know is from other municipal government experience and associate members, so I think it can be either one of what Michelle described. So you can either have an associate member, like a zoning board would have an associate member that's there in case anyone is absent at any one of the meetings, they would become a voting member. So I think that that's probably the best way to go, just because then that provides for, even when Bill gets back, the ability, if someone else is absent, if Jean's not there, you've got someone that's been participating, she's informed on what's going on, she's been going to all the meetings, and she can vote for that person.
But
So
even, should there be a time period that if a member's gone for X amount of time, let's say Bill's gone for, 6 to 8 months, but Michelle makes that, she's a lot more informed. I mean, where does it roll, where would he become an associate member versus?
I mean, I don't think it matters. I think it's just a question of, you have people that are participating in the meeting, and as long as you've got 5 people there, you've got 5 voting people. And if there becomes a 6th person, she's the associate member, so whenever a full member comes back, then they would resume the sort of voting position, so.
Yeah, coming,
Fair, I just wanted clarity.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't,
I think coming around to the first point of the question that you posed, I think if we're going to go down the path of having an alternate delegate or an alternate member, we should have you participate as often as needed. So in my opinion, I agree, if someone's, for whatever reason, they can't make the meeting, or they're out with the flu, or whatever that discrepancy may be, I would think that I would be happy if he'd serve on those days as well. I would think that would
That
work.
would benefit the communities, for sure,
Right.
to have that role.
do we have to make a motion a certain way to spell it out that way?
I make a motion that we designate an associate member of the Economic Development Committee as a permanent non-voting member unless there's an absence of a full voting member, and they would be the alternate vote.
Second motion?
It's unanimous action.
Does that make sense?
That's
Thank
the clarity I need.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you for all the applicants that reached out to help us this evening. Our next agenda item is 4.2. It's a request for some additional funding from the EDC. Do you know anything? I'll have you explain this one.
Steve.
Oh, Steve.
So you should have received a copy of a quote from a structural engineering firm. So what the EDC is asking for is your support in making a request. We're going to request tomorrow, FinCom meeting, that they transfer, or they give us $10,000 from their reserve account to fund a structural engineering analysis of the church, along with testing for asbestos and lead. We need this because, as you saw last week, we had quite a large turnout of people who are very interested in the revitalization effort. One of the things that the Economic Development Committee is committed to doing is providing the working group, which is about 45 people, with facts so they can make informed decisions. And we clearly need facts about the condition of the church. And this is one of the facts that we need to collect. What is the structural integrity of the building? What is what hazardous materials are present in the building? How much might it cost to remediate them and make whatever structural improvements are necessary? That's clearly a very important fact. So that's what this is for. So tomorrow at the FinCom meeting, we're going to ask them if they would be willing to transfer, like I said, $10,000 from their reserve account to cover the cost of this. And we would hopefully like you guys to support that.
I guess the first question that pops up for me anyways is we have a copy here of the engineering firm and their estimate. Their estimate here is $6,740. So obviously there's an additional $3,300 or thereabouts. What is that extra money that you're looking to do with that?
So that money, this is the estimate that you have is from a structural engineering firm. They do not do asbestos and lead paint testing. They just do structural analysis. So we need to also hire a firm that specializes in testing for detecting asbestos and lead paint and providing us with an estimate for what it might cost to remediate that. So that would be two separate things that we need to do. So the extra money is for that.
Do we have an estimate of what that would cost?
From experience doing this, the chairman, Gene, thinks it would be on the order of $2,000 to $3,000 because he's done it for his own private stuff in the past. So that's his estimate. But we do not have a quote yet for that. So we would certainly get one before we.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I certainly think that the 100 people that were at the Economic Development Committee Downtown Revitalization Workshop deserve and would expect facts when they're trying to make decisions like this. There's going to be a lot of people that want to preserve the church. There's going to be people that want to reinvest in the church. There's going to be people that think we should take down the church. And I think every one of those groups is going to expect the information and the facts around what it would cost to renovate it, what it would cost to take it down, what it would cost if the town kept it, sold it, developed it, whatever. So I really do think we need those facts. I'm not a fan of, like some other folks we know, of spending money on needless studies, but I don't think this at all fits in that category. I think this is something that's critical to a very important project we're investigating in town, so I would support it.
I think the only issue I think I would have is typically the FinCom reserve account is really for emergencies, emergency use. That's the only problem I have with it. The dollars and cents are one thing, but I think asking to fund it out of that particular account, I'm not sure, I can't speak for FinCom, but typically in the past, I served on the committee, and typically we would not use it for something of this nature.
Well,
So I know it may set you back from a timing standpoint, it would set you back, but I would think the right way to fund this really would be a warrant article, in my opinion, but
If you want to have something at town meeting or something, you got time is of the essence.
right, but again, that's,
I mean, and I understand your concern, and had we known this, 6 months ago, we might have taken a different approach, but here we are in February, and we're trying to hopefully come to some consensus by the May town meeting. We just don't have time. And moving forward, the committee has recommended an article for the warrant for a EDC reserve account similar to the FinCom one, so that when things like this come up in the future, we would have a little bit of money available to do things. The next thing that we're envisioning we're going to need funding for that applies to the project across the street is we need to do a wetlands survey. And we need to know from a Conservation Commission perspective and from the state's perspective what the boundaries are of a possible development project that might occur there. Right now, we have no idea whether it would be 50 feet from the water or 200 feet from the water. So we have to do the structural engineering analysis. We have to look at asbestos and lead paint. We also have to know what the development parameter is, so that if the consensus is to do some development, a developer, would know what the perimeter is. So there are going to be more things like this in the future. So that's why we submitted an article for the Maine town meeting to establish some funding, so we don't have to be in this situation again like we are right now.
Mr. Roach?
In the past, wasn't there a study done, an evaluation study on the structure in years past? And also, lead paint and some other, I remember vaguely, I think the town put up money to do that structure, that before we bought it. Does anybody remember that?
I do remember there being an article to do a structural analysis, and it was quite,
Maybe another past, I don't know.
I think the article passed, but I don't think that, I think actually Ms. McCallum served on that committee, if I remember correctly.
I was on the committee, and unfortunately, we couldn't come to contract agreements with the person we selected, and by the time we would have been able to get anything done, it would have been too late to have any answers in time for town meeting. So there's been nothing analyzed
Okay.
that looked
And
together.
the library trustees
I think we had 10 grand.
did have an architect look at the building, but there was never a report signed by a professional engineer, addressing the structural integrity. So we don't have any.
And that's part of why we want to do the study as well, because there has been a lot of speculation that, somebody's gone in there and they said it's going to cost $3 million to redo it, or it's going to cost $2 million, or it's structurally sound, or it's not, or if you add a level, you can do it. So this will take care of all that hearsay and give us just solid
The
information.
library trustees did exactly the same thing for their steam building. They hired a structural engineer. They wrote a report. They said this is how much it would cost to reinforce the floor so books could be put on the second floor. So we need to do the same thing for this other building so that people can, again, make an informed decision about what they would like to see done.
Have you guys talked to the FinCom at all?
We're meeting with them tomorrow. We talked to them informally before. Tomorrow is when we're going to make the request, and it would be very helpful if we could say that Selectmen are in favor of
Anything else?
Well, I don't know, do you have any thoughts regarding the funding source?
I don't really see any way else to fund it. Just, it's funny how this, 5,000, 10,000 just keeps, the prices just keep adding up for something that was supposed to be a flip.
Yeah.
Right. In regard to the water, that's kind of an interesting, segue into that topic, because now it would be helpful to know how good the building is, how strong that building is, because if you're probably not going to be able to keep that very short boundary to the waterway, without maintaining maybe multiple walls. I'm not sure what the zoning is.
Building code and stuff.
Yeah, what this building code might be
I
with
think
respect to
the
that.
town has a conservation agent that might be able to help you out with the wetlands.
So we intend on talking to, I think his name is Scott Pine, and he can give us ballpark estimates on what a wetland survey might cost, and he can certainly recommend companies that we can get quotes from to do it. But, the first thing is get the structural engineering assessment, understand the issue with asbestos and lead paint, and then we can start the next thing, which would be this wetland survey.
Any idea if there would be a cost to the wetland survey, just kind of looking ahead? What else would we be looking at?
I have no idea what a wetland survey would cost. Scott would know, but I have no idea.
From talking to people around town and stuff, it seems like there's a lot more interest in the church than I ever believed. So I think if we plan on doing anything by May, we have to have this information.
Right.
If not, you're looking. Yes, Mr. Roach?
When they do the study, when you get the money, if they would list everything separately, for instance, the paint, the floor, any asbestos on the piping, whatever, if they put it all one lump sum, some effort to remediate some of that area, for instance, the floor tiles, you don't have to pick them up, you go.
Right. So, that's exactly right. So, but we need to know what other kind of asbestos might be in the building. Right. Floor tile is easy. There could be shingles, that may be easy. A lot of the piping that was in the building has been yanked out, so who knows what's there? You just don't know. And certainly there's going to be lead paint in that building. So we just need to know what is there, and if we wanted to reuse it for something else, how much would it cost to make it usable? That's the whole point of this.
Is there anything else that you can imagine that you would need in terms of funding to do a full assessment of the church?
Structural engineering, and the other number we're going to need to get is how much would it cost to demolish the building? That was the decision of the working group. If the consensus of the working group is it's too expensive to keep it the way it is, and it's too close to the water to do anything else with it, if the consensus is we need to tear it down, we also need a demolition cost. Demolition costs usually do not include, and correct me if I'm wrong, remediation of asbestos.
That has to be done before you do it.
So that stuff has to be done before the demolition company can come in and do their job.
It has to be a licensed person.
Yeah. So that's the other number we're going to need, and
So
those
we're going to
three
need a number
things.
for the remediation and a number for the demolition.
Yes, and if the town decides we want to pursue acquiring 6 Main Street, same exact thing is going to have to be done for that building, because it's, it's 50, 60 years old. We're going to need to know.
So that would be the use of this $25,000 is to give you some flexibility to
Exactly, so
do that
if
kind
the
of
town
thing.
decides we want to purchase that property, we need to know before we purchase it, it's going to cost this much to demolish it and this much to remediate asbestos and lead paint. So some of that funding that we're going to ask for in an article.
I would think an estimate to do a demolition, I mean, the remediation might cost a little bit of money to get an estimate for that, but an estimate to demolish, it's got to be,
They may be free.
so yeah, they can just kind of look at
We're not
it.
even at that point, we gotta figure out what we're gonna.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, any additional funding that we might need, I think it would be nominal.
Yeah, so there's a demolition company local to Upton that could give us an estimate for little or no money.
Yeah.
So we're not too concerned about that, but we can't get that for asbestos and lead paint, and we certainly can't get that for structural timber.
Okay.
I think we used a local company with the Patano's building, if I remember correctly, the old Nara Insurance building.
Yeah, I think perhaps we did, I don't remember.
So,
Okay.
so you want to make a motion? Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm not sure, yeah, I'm not sure, I guess it would be a motion of non-opposition, or a motion of...
We support whatever FinCom does. Welcome to a young board. Just make a motion to support FinCom's decision?
Go ahead.
You want me? I mean, I don't think, yeah, because it's not our money. What do you think? Do we need a motion to? So I don't
You
think
don't
we
need a motion to support this.
Tell FinCom we're fine with it. Yeah.
This is
How's that for a motion?
FinCom's decision.
Okay, so as long as we can say tomorrow that you're in support
Yeah.
of
Whatever they
using
decide.
their reserve fund, that's all we need.
All right, how's this? I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen supports FinCom making a decision about how to spend their reserve, and we would support them using that money to support the Economic Development Committee. How's that? Second. You,
And then-
you will do unanimous? Okay.
Not sure about that motion.
I wasn't sure which way you were going.
I better abstain on that one.
It's a majority action.
At the end of the day, of course, we do want to know the answer. We do need to know, seriously, how sound is the building? Very good, thank you.
Moving on. The next item in our package is a road race application from Matt Kelleher of the Triad Valley Frontrunners. He's proposing for a 9.5-mile road race on Saturday, March 30th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Any questions, guys? None here. Did we get all the signatures? Yep. I know we talked to the fire chief about the amount of runners and the distance, and whether or not they needed an ambulance. So I'm not sure what he recommended.
He did sign off this morning, he was going to.
Chief did.
Everybody,
Good.
both chiefs. And he was going to contact Matt Keller
Okay.
for the Chief Bradley's recommendation, and if they needed and required that, he would ask them for the funding for that.
Okay.
So they're-
I have no other questions.
I have no other questions, no? We're good?
I'm good.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Tri-Valley Frontrunners Road Race. That request is for Saturday, March 30th.
I second the motion. Moving on. First up for budget is Council on Aging. Hello.
Good evening.
How are you doing tonight? Janice? You have the easiest budget in town. One page, 2 pages.
So, Council on Aging / Government Social Services for the town of Upton. We have our wage line, which is the only increase that we have because of the COLA, 2.5%. We have building maintenance, general operations for a total of $205,680. To serve all of the residents and community, especially the disabled, seniors, and those that are in need.
I have no questions, it's so clear cut.
It's clear cut.
It is.
Did you know how many seniors we have in town?
Sure.
1,202
It's right here.
for that 2016 census.
How many residents are there in Mill House?
There's 89 apartments. There's probably, maybe out of those, 10 two-bedrooms, which could be 2 people. So total for now, the residents, the number varies, but yeah, there's only 89 apartments.
When does the actual lease expire?
Well, that's a really good question. It went in increments of a certain amount of years. I believe it was
There's a difference in 5, I think it's 2028.
2028, yeah. Yes, so. But we'd love a new municipal community center so that we can expand our services and programs. And
I want to just mention a little bit, because I don't think that folks realize that we have to see an annual formula grant that helps offset some of this cost.
right, Yes, and that's excellent. We get from the state of Massachusetts gives to all of the towns $12 per senior in town. So our total that we get is, for this year, $14,424. There's very strict guidelines what we can use that for. We use it to go to the Mass Council on Aging Conference for supplies. We can use it for transportation, bus repairs, fuel. We can use it for heat, water, electricity. So that's why you don't see a change in my numbers because it would obviously be increasing, but I'm able to pick up the slack and formula grant. For this year, anyways, I'm able to do this. That number, $12 per senior, varies. Last year, I believe it was $11.92, something like that. It all depends. It goes to the State House as to what we get for numbers. So I don't know what next year is going to bring in. As I said, I'd love to be expanding programs and services, especially I'd like to increase our transportation services because currently we have one 18-hour-a-week driver and one 10-hour-a-week driver. We're able to meet the needs, but I would love to see that increase in the use of the bus.
What are some of the most popular events that you facilitate?
Anything in food.
Anything in food? Yeah, love it.
Yeah, we do a lot of programs on health and wellness. I can tell you sometimes they're well attended, sometimes they're not. I can tell you that we had BVT dental students came and did an incredible program on dental care, and we had 3 seniors come. We had a Super Bowl party on Friday and we hit 40. So it's tough to say where their priorities are as to what they would like to come. And if I could on the sidebar, my personal belief is if we really did have this municipal community center, that we would get more residents from the town, from the community coming in, that I think would really benefit from our programs. And one of my goals is to increase programs for those in that 50 to 60 age group, facing retirements, second career choices, all of those kinds of good things that are very complicated. You know, a lot of folks I know personally have been let go from jobs, they're 60, 61, and they can't find work. So we should be providing some services to them too. I think we can do that. I have the background to do that, so.
Do you think most of your participants come from within Millhouse or throughout the community more?
They do. They do, and we had a conversation at our board meeting yesterday with my members as to those that supported this new community center and those that wanted us to stay at Millhouse. And the only reason they could tell me that they wanted to stay at where we are is because the convenience of walking through. But yet they don't come to the programs. They didn't come to the students programs with BBT. So it's kind of like you say you're going to come. Sorry, but that's the facts. It's what's happening. So I speak the truth. It's not always popular, but.
Yeah. I know in the last budget cycle, or maybe even be 2 budget cycles prior, our cost for the space changed. Now, we had building and maintenance money and general operations money here in your budget. Those are carried over. Do either one of those address the so-called rent that we pay for the space?
The rent's $1. And we actually haven't ever, in my 5 years, given them $1. I get my pocketbook, but we haven't actually given them. That's just a kind of a, what do they call it? Legal agreement. In-kind, yeah. So, and, you know, I don't anticipate, there's no real talk of us being kicked out of there. So, I mean, I'm not worried about that. It's just, you know, Derek and Kelly and Sandy were here yesterday. It was one of our busiest days. We do tax preparation, actually, I would like to say that. AARP has volunteers that come in and do the income taxes for folks. And then for anybody in town that more lower income and kind of got more complicated taxes. So so they need anybody that's watching call the center, we can schedule you an appointment. But they have 3 tax preparers coming in, and they're from 9 to 1. And if you have anything else going on, it's crazy. Anyways, so sweet.
Anything else, Mr. Stiles? No, thank you very much. Great.
No, nothing else.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you do. So, we've been making motions on these, haven't we, to approve it as submitted?
Yes. I just want to point out one thing, that there is a typo in the budget. So when you look at the building maintenance budget as a whole, the bottom line is 48,420. There's a line item in there called no change in account, 24,210. That number's going to come out. So that number's going to drop in half. Okay, so that's a typo. That shouldn't be. So that's the reason why that line item is doubled. So that's why it says 48. It actually should be 24,210.
Right, so that just,
So to answer your question, the motion would be with those changes.
For the 205, 654, for the 229. What was the general fund total? 205, 654? Okay. So I make a motion to approve the Council on Aging budget as submitted with the following changes. The total account for the building maintenance expenses should be 24,2010, and the total at the bottom for general fund should be 205,654.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action. Next on the agenda is code enforcement. We have Mr. Roach and Mrs. Judge here this evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
When do we want to start?
Wherever you'd like to, sir.
You want to talk about the building that's coming up? We have a lot of projects that we went over today's meeting. This new project, short to happen, 180 units. New 3 projects.
What would be those 3? What would be the 3 projects?
We have Upton Ridge, which is supposed to be, there's 169 units. They said it's going to be, they're going to do 48 per year or 4 months. If it ramps up, they'll do more. If not, they'll do less, as they're sold. Okay? But there's total units of 169 units, a lot of houses. Okay? 129 Main Street, Lotuses, he's got 44 units over there. And East Street Estates, there's 16 units over there.
16.
This does not include Governor's Landing, which is just in proposal stage right now. The Governor's Landing, 162. But we're on for some serious work. I figure we'll collect this year just the fees, the building permit fees, no other houses, no other sold anything. About $285,000. Just in fees for these 3 projects.
What's the most you've ever seen built in 1 year?
The average was, I've done, in the years I've been building structure, the average was 50 houses a year, but sometimes you'd have 30, sometimes you'd have 60, you know, we would bounce all around, but I haven't done a study on it the past years, you know. But usually it comes out about 50 a year. This is going to knock a bit out of the park, of course.
The project off of East Street, you said that's how many units?
East Street is, that is going to be, East Street is 16 units, those are single-family houses with their own wells, their own septic system. That's the 6 Governor's Landing, I don't know, that's quite a ways out. We're not even gonna go in after this year, I would think. But that's just for 3 units, that's not including electrical, plumbing, water connections,
Probably all the single-family homes that may come up in the course of the next year. It doesn't count those.
This year, we reduced single families, and new houses, new homes, just a home with 33.
33.
So, of course, you're gonna have added on to this, for houses, in other inspections, like all the inspections we do, demolition, stores, stoves, finished basement, all the additions and all the models on that.
How does the,
Puts a pretty heavy load on it.
how does the forecasted revenue that you're describing compare to what's in here? Because I think what's in here is 117, but that's probably based on a more traditional year. Right, so this is sort of your standard number versus that.
That would be a standard number. But like I said, this is
Exceptional.
looking a lot of money.
Yeah, good.
We're not asking a lot on our budget. We kept that 2%, except for one portion of it, which is the local building inspector, which would be the assistant building inspector. He's getting $16,769 a year. He's working approximately 20 hours a week. And if you look at how he came up to the salary of $21,065 for an annual salary, he took 2%. When the town manager had, we had another building inspector who was the commissioner. He retired, Steve took over for him, didn't have a license, got his license. He never really got a raise. And how many years was it? 7 years. So we took 2% every year up to the state, and we think that's how we justify that. I don't think it's an outrageous justification. They get them up to $21 an hour.
And additionally, that position had been cut, when he was hired, the position was cut, like over $3,000, because of the fact that he was not licensed. And so that was our rationale, and that's kind of how we came up with the figures to have that salary remain the same. That would bring us to where we are now and looking to provide an increase.
Okay, and that's the $17,359?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we were to look at this year over year, so what was that number last year? I know you said you brought it forward, but I don't see last year's number to that. Is it spelled out somewhere close?
Yeah, I just looked at what it was in 2011, and it was cut by that amount, so I don't think I have all the figures going back that far.
So that's the 17,359 is what we're talking about increasing to 21,065?
Yes.
Okay, what's the number I'm looking for? 21,065.
You see where I'm getting that, Steve? The 21,065?
Well, I see the 17,359.
I think you're asking for last year's number, that
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
So the number that's in the budget says 17,359. That is last year's number of 16,935 times 2.5%
I see.
COLA.
Okay, 16,925, okay.
And this graph here that you should have a copy of, you can see the discrepancy. He actually made less money than the wiring inspector and the plumbing and gas inspector. Did more inspections than the plumbing inspector in addition to maintaining office hours. So we just felt that he was very underpaid.
Very underpaid.
Okay.
So your point, Steve, would be going from the 16,900 to the 21.
Yes, that's,
Right.
that
That
was,
job is worth on the street, $35 to $40 an hour, he would be making $21.06.
Is that up there?
So
Is that up to personnel or anything? Or?
no, because it stays within the wage classification.
Okay.
I had met Pat and Diane, and we talked about this, and given the fact that our building inspector at the time wasn't certified, didn't have the requisite experience, at the time in 2011, it probably made sense to lower that salary based upon lack of qualifications and experience. And so I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain internal equity, given the fact that Steve's been with us since 2011, so that out of 7 years now, he's received 7 years' experience and has those certifications that are required. And so I do think this is an appropriate salary for this type of position. It's still less than a lot of the other local building inspectors as well, too. So this is really an important position, as you can imagine, especially with everything that I've just
I
mentioned.
mean, when do you decide to go to a part-time versus a full-time position? Is there a magic number?
For the last 43 years, it's been part-time. And I'm trying to say, put down money in that cap, a lot of money. Because we're going to have super and gross, that doesn't mean, we have to go full-time on something like this, okay? I think it can be handled part-time with a plumbing and assistant plumbing inspector, that's why I have 2 for each. Electrical, safety, and building, okay? We do what we have to do to get it done. Okay? I don't care if it's 50 hours a week, we'll get it. And that's the way we've always run it. And it has been successful. As far as I'm concerned,
Well, by all means, if you can, if you do with 2 part-time personnel, certainly, look at all, the issues we have with regard to OPEB, so it certainly is saving us on that front, for sure.
save a lot of money in that. The number of getting benefits.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And I fight with Derek over mileage. Big deal, they give mileage, you can't run a 4-wheel drive vehicle for that amount of money you get, so actually you probably lose money every year when we do inspections. For mileage wise, let's put it that way, okay? You can't run a 4-wheel drive vehicle, you can't take a car onto a job site that's a month up to the axle. You know what I mean? So,
I think what Pat's trying to say is that we reimburse all our town employees the IRS rate, and has a study that he thinks that 4-wheel drive vehicles should receive a higher rate, like 73 cents a mile, somewhere in there.
it's not a lot of money, you know what I mean, compared to maintenance, you know yourself, with the vehicle business, crazy.
Right.
Well, you could get a Prius here.
You can make money.
If you're gonna be a go, we don't care.
Get a Prius and some higher boots.
I'm kind of adjusting to the people who work.
Park in the street and walk in, right?
Walk to the job site.
Last year, we made money for the town. We made $27,000 last year, above the normal cost at the time. You didn't know the inspections, the wire inspectors, the plumbing inspectors, per inspection they get paid. They get a stipend salary of $6,900. For sure of that, they get paid for inspection on top. But we should make a lot of money this and next year for, for the town.
You would think Upton Ridge would take X number of years to actually build out and sell out, but still keep it
But if the economy's up,
3 years.
right.
the economy's up, people will turn them over quick.
169 units sounds like a lot, but boy, when you want to go,
Yeah.
And
All the pays depend on the economy.
and every one of them is sewer and water too, so that's a lot, connection fees.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of money for them.
You know what I
For a
thought?
rainy day. Well, I don't know, that's about it.
Do you have any questions? I don't have any other questions, thank you. Do you have any questions, Steve?
I don't, it's pretty straightforward. Job well done, folks.
Thank you for everything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion just with that one change? Yeah. Has a change, we should do it.
Make a motion that we accept the code enforcement budget other than the aforementioned change that we had, which is the $21,065.
Yeah, it's unanimous action. Next on our agenda was the DPW. Dennis was unable to make it because of an illness, so we're going to skip to agenda item 514, execution of the town manager.
It's 5.0, isn't it?
What's that?
5.0, I think was what you were.
Oh, 5.1.
No, you said 4.1.
Oh. Everybody good?
Yeah. So,
You want to do the
Yeah,
lead-in?
about a month and a half.
the Board of Selectmen have been reviewing the town manager's contract for the past 8 weeks or so, looking at performance, looking at comparables to other towns, looking at the best interests of the town, and primarily focusing on both the job market, the labor market, comparables to other towns, the work that's been getting done for and in the town of Upton, as well as general equity and a desire to retain the town manager. So what we're recommending at the town meeting is a renewed contract that would be a 3-year contract. We had the option to do a 5-year contract. We knew at the last town meeting there was a pretty divided vote around whether the town manager or the Board of Selectmen should be allowed to do a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract. Because of that, we thought we would be conservative and just do a 3-year contract. Derek was amenable to that. So what we're doing tonight is we're going to approve the extension of the renewal of a town manager contract starting July 1st of this year, going 3 years from then. And then that will go into the town meeting in May. Yeah, on the 2nd. So that's it. Any conversation, comments? Otherwise, I'll make the motion. I am going to make a motion to appoint the town manager pursuant to Section 3 of the Town Manager Act for a contract starting July 1st, 2019, concluding June 30th of 2022.
Second the motion?
Unanimous action? So now we'll go into your budget presentation.
Sure, but before I begin the budget presentation, I just want to thank the board for your faith and confidence in the work that I do. As you know, that there's a lot of movement in Massachusetts right now amongst town managers, and I didn't want to be in that fray. So I'm happy to know that I'm going to be here at least through 2022. And as I've always said in the past, that as I interviewed for the position about 2 years ago, although I was being interviewed, I was also interviewing the board at the time and the community. And so, I chose Upton as much as Upton chose me because I believe there's opportunities here and there's great things that can happen. So I'm excited to continue to work here, and I love the people I work with. Sandy and Kelly, they do so much. Glenn's here and so many other department heads. So I appreciate this once again, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Derek. So
So that being said, we'll just try to jump right into the Board of Selectmen Town Manager budget. This was slated for the last meeting, but since I think we're here till 11 p.m., we decided to delay this for an additional meeting. So, as we started last year, we thought of new ways to present the budget that made, I hope, better sense to the community. And so a lot of times the budget was presented as standalone budget items, but as we look at the budget, we start to realize that many of the, it's on page 22, that many of the standalone budget items were actually under the auspices of the town manager's office. So in this budget presentation, you will see additional items like our legal costs, our insurance costs, our pension, and any miscellaneous items. And so I'll talk a little bit about those this evening. Just for some highlights, there are a number of recommendations that I'm making, and some of these recommendations are really to give us greatest flexibility in the work that we do year in and year out. And so what you'll see here this evening is I am requesting that we add an additional line item under the Board of Selectmen's expense line of $5,000. What we have realized is that there are a lot of parcels that become opportunity parcels during the course of the year, and so we don't have the ability to react to those parcels. So to require engineering, to order an appraisal for a parcel of land, potentially do a survey, because we're going to be doing a land taking. So I am recommending that we add an additional $5,000 to the Board of Selectmen's line item of $5,000 to do just that. Additionally, you'll see an increase in the town's legal expense by approximately $5,000. So the line item each year is about $75,000. Oftentimes, we're able to return back some of that money if we have a slow year in legal expenses. Last year, KP went up from $160 an hour to $170 an hour. So we do know there's going to be an increased cost in that. So this $5,000, I believe, will cover any additional costs above, given the fact that they've increased their hourly rate. You'll see an increase in the town manager line item of $1,950. And that is because last year, all I did is I had taken the previous expense line item and just roll that into it, not realizing what the true costs were. And so this year, between all of our memberships with 495 Partnership, Mass Municipal Association, ICMA, and others, what we've noticed in attending these conferences, so attending the MMA conference and others, that we're really at the edge and even being able to meet those numbers. So recommending an additional $1,900 increase to continue in those membership associations. And I often say that those are beneficial. I talk about I attended an MMA last year. I had dinner with somebody and came back with the idea to go out to bid for an insurance, and that yielded $40,000 just by attending that one meeting. So I do think attending these professional development conferences yield great results. As a placeholder for health insurance, the Maya, who is our health insurance provider, continues to suggest and recommend that we have a placeholder budget of approximately 10%, so an increase of 10%, which is our biggest line item in our budget. This year, because of hiring up to 3 new firefighter paramedics, could be a potential another 2 police officers. Public safety personnel have more stringent requirements as far as medical testing and medical standards. So we've increased that line item by $3,000 to $6,000 to cover those expected costs. And then lastly, we talk a lot about fixed costs that we have no control over, and our pension liability has grown by over 11% this year, from $513,000 to $571,000. So those are the budget highlights. Everything else has really been budget neutral for the most part, but those are the areas that I thought would be most pressing given the fact that we're seeing needs out there in the community. And then one last item, I didn't bring it up under our wages, so certainly we'll make the adjustments to any wages based upon the new contract. But under the Selectmen wages account on page 25, there's a new line item in there for $5,000, and that is to cover all the overtime costs for the department, in particular the work that Sandy does. So we all know that Sandy wears multiple hats, and she's not an exempt employee. And so attending personnel board meetings, staying late to do interviews costs the town money. So we've been trying to figure out other ways to limit that by not having Sandy come in on Fridays or other days when she hits her 40-hour max. But there's just way too much work ahead of us and behind us in order to continue that pathway. So $5,000 line item will help cover the costs of all those additional hours that are spent. And to date, we've already spent over $3,500 in overtime just to cover that work. So that's a new item you see on the wage.
Very new to
So I'm happy to take on any questions.
I think in light of the comment earlier made by Mr. Rackett, I think that if they're looking to set up a revolving fund for EDC, we kind of can potentially do the same thing here. I think I'd actually rather see that type of a fund under the Board of Selectmen, only so that there's always been this feeling that there's not enough communication between boards. So instead of having a $25,000 revolving fund or emergency fund for EDC, it'd be nice if, we're going to have $5,000 on our side. Maybe that should be a little combined money, maybe the 25 only instead of 25 and 5, and have it under the Board of Selectmen. That way, if they have something that they want to make a move on, or here's the situation, if we look forward a year or two, and those type of tests needed to be done, we may not know, or we may not find out for a week or two or a month. So I think it's helpful, for them to come before us, we have an idea, and, we're in the know, so to say.
Well, it also gives us flexibility to use the funds for something other than Economic Development Committee.
Exactly.
Right, if something comes up from the Library Trustees Board or another committee or the DPW committee, and they say, hey, we need $2,000 to go do this or $1,000 to go do that, it gives us the discretion of using those funds for something other than the economic development, so.
Right, to give us some flexibility. Any
Yeah.
sort of emergency repair or emergency purchase, it would give us that ability to do that, where we don't have anything in our budget right now.
So you recommend actually raising this?
Well, I think we should, in my opinion, I would not want to see EDC have, a revolving fund or an emergency fund. I would say eliminate that, but I think that our fund should be larger.
Did they
We could support them, or as Brett had mentioned.
Did they submit an article
They submitted a warrant article.
for 25,000?
It's Article 32, and I'll just read it to you. The EDC is requesting funding for activities such as engaging consultants for revitalization, performing structural engineering assessments, hazardous materials testing, wetland surveys. In addition, the committee would like to create marketing materials to be used to help attract businesses, so on and so forth. So they requested $25,000 in an article for a similar purpose.
Right. So I think my thinking is, I guess, the question would be is, do you think that 25,000 is too high? I would say it is, but that's me. And if so, again, I'd like to see that money moved into our budget so that we would have control over it. As you said, not only for EDC purposes, for any other purposes that may come up. So FinCom would have their reserve fund, and we would have ours.
Is there a way to
I was going to say,
title it?
how would we, if we wanted to do what Steve is describing, what would be the procedural steps we would need to take to do that between that warrant article?
It's been approved, or prior to this.
Whatever is the easiest way to accomplish what Steve just described.
Well, through the budget process, you could make a motion to change that number to whatever you desire.
Yeah.
For the purposes in which you desire.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be used for EDC efforts or initiatives, then I think the process beyond that is that the EDC would come before the board and say that, hey, we need to order a survey, we need to survey this land, we need to order an appraisal, and we're seeking $7,000. You have the money now already appropriated in an account, which you could then authorize. In that case, what we would do as far as the administrative function, we would work with the EDC to order the appraisal, and then we would receive the invoice and we would just pay it out of this account. So we wouldn't technically transfer the money to the EDC, we would administrate the money on their behalf.
So if that warrant goes as is, we can still request that the process for requesting those funds is to come to the Board of Selectmen to get approval. Is that what you're saying, or did I miss it?
No, I think what would happen in that instance is we would vote as a board to not put that particular article on the warrant.
Got it.
We would basically, we as a
Pull that
board,
out.
we would scratch their article request,
Put it in the...
but we would put it in under our line item, our expense,
Got it.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what you would do. Right. So you're just moving money from the warrant over into
Yeah.
the budget.
And we could use, and if, when people asked about that, we could use that same justification for why we're requesting that funding. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's the only downside really to doing it that way, is
Yeah.
it's gonna show up, the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager budget is gonna, be increased by a sizable margin.
yeah, but we can, I mean,
We'll
we'll have to
some
explain.
discussion, I'm sure people will ask questions, so we'll be glad to, hopefully the folks in attendance kind of understand what we're trying to do. So, again.
Are you going to field some of those questions, Steve? We need your help.
It depends how far from the decimal point it is, right?
So, well, which exact line item would that be? On what
It's
page?
the new one for $5,000?
It's under expenses, selectmen expense, it's the appraisals, engineering, and survey.
Okay, it's on page 25 then.
Page 25, yep.
So what do you? what
So
we
you
got?
want to take that 5 and make it 25, Steve?
I mean, do you gentlemen think that that is a reasonable number?
Yeah.
In light of the fact that FinCom still has their emergency fund of, I believe it's 20,000, right?
25.
25,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you.
So then, yeah, I would propose that we move that number to 25,000.
Okay? And then we'll pull that warrant article, the EDC warrant.
Yes.
Yeah, because the last thing we want to do is double up.
So, we'll probably start reviewing articles the first week of March.
Okay.
And so at that meeting, when we go through the
Yeah,
articles,
we'll
we
just swipe it.
Is it worth giving them any money at all though?
Say
So they
again?
don't have to bother us all the time? Is it worth giving them like 5,000 or something? Or?
What they do, part of their request is for marketing materials.
Right, that's,
So I don't know at what depth you want to
I
be
don't really,
working with the EDC.
like, do you want to do this at 20, then we'd change their warrant article to 5,000, so you don't have to, every time they want to, put up a poster or something, do you really want them here?
Oh, because they did ask, you said they're asking for marketing materials?
Yes.
As part of that, oh.
I mean, I would still like to see it come before our board, and it wouldn't so much that they would have to appear before the board, but the request could be made through Derek, and I think he could, he could obviously run that by us in the course of our regular meetings.
Ms. Antonelli?
Hi, I'm Sally Antonelli. Just for clarification, I did attend the EDC committee meeting when they were discussing what they were looking for of the marketing materials. And they were looking for providing some sort of brochure to attract other businesses, as well as some sort of video, all about Upton and why you want to bring your business to Upton, your small business to Upton. So it's not posters, it's more robust, just to give you an idea of what's in there.
Got it, that's
And
cool.
to add to that,
Thank you.
they were looking at other towns and what other towns have for their economic development, and the budget that they were looking at is similar to what other towns have on budget, economic development committees have for budgets. So it wasn't just for appraisals and stuff like that, it was for more options. And then also another note, that article was going to be for FY19, so they were thinking that they would need to use some of those monies before July 1.
Good point. So possibly, if this is the direction the board's headed in, they could determine a number to go in the operating budget, but to Kelly's point, maybe you just reduce the article number to allow them to start working on some, they do have some work they need to accomplish in May and June that they want to start working on as soon as they could. And an article would allow that. The operating budget would not allow it until July 1st.
Oh, then in the following fiscal year, we could raise this to that number. the
So
25.
this is, so heading for FY20, you could, whatever the number, say it's $20,000
Yeah.
in the operating budget and provide $5,000 in the article. To Kelly's point, that'll get them through that
May, June,
transition period, and then July 1st, they can always come to the board
right,
to see.
right. They'll be able to use whatever extra they have of the 5,000 left over, as well as come to us if they need more. Yeah,
I'm good
that
with
makes
either
sense.
5 or 10,000 there, and
The difference
20 or-
here.
Yeah. So whatever
What do you
guys-
think, Steve? 20 here and 5 there, oh,
Yeah, I would say that would
okay.
be ideal.
We might want to actually check with the EDC, and we'll have time before we look at the warrant articles, just to make sure that the 5 is enough to get them through. It should be, but I would
You
just
just-
caution that we might want to check with them.
And they're gonna.
Well, hopefully they're going to get the 10, and we gave them 5 last meeting, so hopefully between the 15 and the 20, they should be good.
And just remember that the EDC is gonna come before the board to talk about their article. So at that time.
Right, we can discuss
you
it.
can say, well, is it 7? Is the number really 7? Okay, how about we reduce it to 7? Because we've already earmarked money in the operating budget for this purpose.
Yep.
But so my point is, you'll be able to engage in a dialogue at some point in early March.
Well, maybe then at that point, we won't approve this budget just yet until we're really sure of how we want the numbers to play out. Again, my thinking was I really think it would be nice for that information to be coming through this board. Because they don't want to get into a situation where they have a $25,000, let's just say hypothetically, there's a warrant article and they have basically an expense account of $25,000.
Yep.
And 2, 3, 4, 5 years go by,
Yep.
$75,000 gone or $100,000, whatever the number is. And people don't see a perceived value. They don't see that anything was
Yep.
accomplished. They may see, well, we investigated all these things and we basically tried like hell, but we
Yep.
didn't really get anything done. So that's the only thing that I would prefer to see.
Yep.
Those requests come through this board, would be my thinking.
That sounds good.
So
I
we
agree.
can, if that's good with everyone, we can hold off on approving this budget?
I mean,
Manager, Board of Selectmen budget until we know how those numbers will play out, or do you want to?
Let's just put 20 in there.
yeah, I think I think if we just put the 20 in and assume we're going to do the 20 and the 5, and then if we're in a pinch, we can always change it still. It doesn't, there's no reason we can't come back and change it, right, Derek?
Right.
Even if we approve this, we can unapprove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what the number is, if you want to change it then. And I'll modify, well, okay.
Yeah.
So it'd be $15,000 higher, so the new budget will be $250,840 even? Correct, we're picking up
Yep.
15,000?
Yep. Because the 5 will go to 20.
Okay. Any other discussion, or shall I make a motion?
I have no other discussion.
You're going to make a motion for the bottom line, overall budget?
Yeah, I was going to change that.
We haven't
We don't have
made any contractual changes to it. So unless your motion is with the contractual.
Contingent, right. So make it contingent on this change as well as incorporating the updated contract.
All right, so then we have to do some mathematics now.
No, we don't have to, I think we can get around the math just by approving it with the changes
Okay.
for this 20,000 plus whatever's in the contract.
Okay. So make a motion that we approve the Board of Selectmen Town Manager's contract for $250,840, plus the additional monies in the new Town Manager's contract.
Yep.
Is that good?
Second?
It's unanimous action. Do you have a town manager report tonight, Derek, or?
I didn't prepare only because I thought we would have been here until 11 p.m., but, I certainly can bring up a few things that came up this morning at staff meeting. Just give me a second here. So one thing I just want to talk a little bit about, and we're still pursuing more information. I had a meeting with potential marijuana cultivator on Friday. They are working with the Davidson Family Trust on leasing out that land. The challenge, so you may, I don't know if you know this, but if you don't, I'm going to tell you. Back in 2017, the Davidson farm was a recipient of a special permit and variance from the ZBA to offer medicinal marijuana cultivation on that site. And so Tom Davidson and others have been working with potential companies. And so there's a company who's interested in coming to town. I met with them on Friday. They're trying to work out a lease agreement. Their challenge or their barrier is that they have a state license for adult use marijuana cultivation, not medicinal marijuana cultivation. So that lies the question, can the property host a adult use cultivation center
under the existing permit? And if not, what does the property owner have to do in order to get that amended to an adult use? Or does the new bylaw that was passed at town meeting take precedent and supersede any potential changes to this site? And so I'm working with council to answer those questions right now.
That's why it costs us $170 an hour.
Right. So that's new information.
Do you have any feedback yet from the?
No, again, I just met with them on Friday. I sent a request to council on Monday, explaining the situation. So I'll hopefully learn more in the next couple of weeks.
Now, would they,
Interesting.
let's say the town votes a certain way, will that previous zoning ruling affect the town's vote? Would they be able to weasel their way in?
So I would, not being an attorney, I would believe that the current permit that was granted by the ZBA to the Davidson Family Trust, we would have to uphold that permit. That permit doesn't expire this year. It's only lasts for 2 years, so I think we have to uphold that permit. So if a business wanted to come in right now to grow, cultivate medicinal marijuana, I don't think the town meeting action in November would be able to supersede that permit. However, given the fact that this business cannot do medicinal, can only do adult use, that's the question. Does that now prevent this property from going from medicinal to adult use? So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Interesting. Gotta love new laws.
I never even heard of this special permit until tonight.
Right.
Yeah, it's news to me.
I knew that there was something out there. I had always heard whispers. I hadn't never seen the permit until a few weeks ago when this question came up.
I thought somebody would have brought it to our attention when we were discussing all this. Not from you, like the zoning board of appeals or.
But I would think where the state of Massachusetts is so well-defined on the different uses and the different
Right.
types,
Right.
obviously of licensing that they are authorizing, it would seem to me that you would not be able to very easily change from one to the other.
That would,
I would think.
yeah. That would be my assumption as well, but the attorneys would have to tell us that, right? It doesn't seem like that they'd say, hey, if you called it medical marijuana use now, that includes, no matter what the rules were, what you had set up or what exceptions you made, now that also includes all adult use as well. I don't know, it seems like a stretch.
It was cultivation. You were granted a permit to, in an agricultural zone for cultivation purposes. Doesn't matter if you're cultivating medicinal versus adult use. I think that's going to be how they decipher that.
Interesting.
At least if you cultivate it, you can't sell it on that property. So it'd have to be sold in another town.
Right, yeah. It'd just be a growing facility. So just I want to talk a little bit about some personnel issues, because I think it's important. Right now, the DPW is down 3 FTEs. That's 20% of the staff. So if you think of an organization, if the Patriots are down 20% of their football team, obviously they probably struggle to win the Super Bowl. So I think it's important to note that there's a lot of work we need to do with the DPW. We're trying to think of ways that we can support them both administratively and some of their support. But last year, Chief Bradley he was down a couple of police officers all at once, and it was a really challenging time for them to get through that. The difference here is that it was in the middle of our winter season, and Dennis Westgate relies heavily on his staff to get out there and push snow. So
I know of the one individual, what are retirements, injuries?
we have 2 other individuals out on medical leave.
IOD or personal?
No, personal. Yeah. So I just want to bring that to folks' attention, because when an organization's down 20% of their staff, it has a severe limitation on the work that they can do.
And what departments are they in? So one is the administrative.
2 is in water, wastewater.
2 in water,
One
wastewater.
is an administrator.
Yeah.
As far as other personnel issues in town, Sandy's going to the police department tomorrow. They're going to be doing police interviews. They have 5 candidates, I think, remaining for the police interviews.
No, that would be the fire. We have 6 candidates we're bringing back for second interviews for fire. And there's about 8 or 10.
For police. I know we lost one today, that's why I was kind of unsure of the number.
Yeah, we lost a couple. They've already accepted positions with other departments.
So the chief Bradley is looking to hire at least 1 police officer this winter, early spring. Chief DeFranzo, still, again, tough market out there, trying to find qualified firefighter paramedics. He's on the hunt to at least hire 2 qualified paramedics. And if we have to, maybe think about sending these individuals to the fire academy. So again, a lot of work on the personnel, which is why, I had mentioned the human resources function of work we do. We're always feel like we're in that mode, either hiring, getting people onboarded and such.
Seems like there's an ongoing challenge to staffing municipalities along a lot of fronts, right, between fire, EMS, police, DPW, town managers. We know Sturbridge was having a challenge, right? They ended up hiring somebody from Alaska, sight unseen, other than on Skype, because they couldn't find anybody in the state that was qualified. So
I would say
tough.
almost every municipality across the state is really challenged at finding really good help, and I think a lot of it has to do with the economy.
Yeah.
That, folks are out there in the private sector doing well for themselves, but to your point, trying to find already academy-trained police officers has been really challenging. Paramedic firefighters, an individual that holds that dual status is nowadays almost non-existent. And then, even what Pat talked about, trying not to lose his only building inspector, because he knows there's not a line at the door for folks with those credentials to be building inspectors. So, there's over a half a dozen or more town managers, towns looking for town managers right now in Massachusetts.
So how, for the DPW, what will we do? Are we going to post a rec to try to find a full-time assistant? Is the part-time assistant interested in going full-time? Would that work? Does it make sense? Like, how are we going to support Dennis?
Yeah, it's going to be challenging early on because these people are still on the books, and so we're still paying for them. So the barrier there is that we don't have any extra funds to support those operations, and so this is the problem that they're really going to have to go without during this time. Now, if somebody was out on IOD or if an individual was on a workers' comp, we would use our insurance to offset those costs, and we could then draw from the operating budget to backfill those positions. I think long-term, and if Dennis was here today, he would talk about the need for additional administrative support. I mean, he's basically running 3 different operations. He's got 2 enterprise accounts in his highway and parks department, and so this is the only department that we have in town that really could use 2 administrators, given the 2 different functions that department offers. So he will need additional support, not only temporary, but certainly permanently and long-term.
And as in some departments, there is temporary work that is available, temporary employees, so to say. Is there any chance of doing that with regard to the highway department? I mean, is there?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the DPW does have temporary, they do have money for temporary staff. Typically, it's our seasonal staff, so we try to bring folks on early on in May to get ahead of the mowing season. And then in the winter, we hire additional contractors to come in and drive some of our trucks. We'd have to look at that to see if we have any additional dollars to maybe bring somebody on full-time, at least for a short period of time.
Yeah,
And there-
Like a temporary.
Yeah, for IOD, insurance pays some of the overtime coverage? Is that what you said?
If individual is on, right,
One guy out on workman's comp.
right.
Could we try to figure out a temporary way maybe to, that's what Steve was saying, fill that position temporarily?
Yeah, we could look to see, we'd have to look at those numbers because we're covering 3/5 of that salary. So there's 2/5 that's out there. So we could look at that.
2/5 of an hour, or a week, whatever that would be.
Right. Right. So we'll have to see if there's other ways. We'll have to look at the salary expense line item and crunch the numbers to see if we can find some temporary help there.
And just as a testament to the town and the town hall and the community and how it's being run, I was at the staff meeting that Derek holds with the administrators and the leaders and the department directors this morning that Dennis raised this issue where he was going to be short on administrative staff. And they were all being very creative and supportive of each other. So there was another administrator from another department that said, hey, temporarily, you can forward me the phones there. You had Janice Newicki from Council on Aging saying, hey, maybe some of my seniors that are doing the work-off program for taxes could volunteer and do some of the work, you know, in the DPW to help answer phones or what have you. So it was just inspiring to me and great for me to see those interactions and to see everybody in the town helping each other and trying to come up with a great solution. I thought that was really cool. Very nice.
Yeah, they do a great job.
And you do end up with situations where senior work off or the veterans work off, people are looking for hours. They're
Yeah.
looking for something to do.
Yeah.
So here's a situation where
Perfect.
you can direct them to that department maybe and try to as a stopgap measure,
Yeah.
try to take care of that.
Yeah, it's great.
And I know some of the local universities now are starting to come up with programs, I know with respect to law enforcement, where students would graduate academy trained.
Right.
So I think this will be, kind of a short-term problem with regard to police.
Right.
I know fire is pretty guarded with their, academy and firefighter 1 and firefighter 2.
Even like a pick off back off what Steve was saying, even if we got like an intern here from a college that needs so many hours a week for credits, they could do some of the data entry or building of programs or something.
Right.
Yeah, even timekeeping.
Yeah.
When you think of timekeeping with DPW.
I actually talked to a Harvard grad on Friday who asked if we have any internship opportunities. I gave him my card, and he said, yeah, we're always looking for free help, so.
Yeah. That's right, not all internships pay.
That's right.
So you're right.
They paid.
Free help.
So last thing I'll just report, Kelly and Chief Bradley and Dennis and I, we went out to bid for the police station roof for a designer service. And so we reviewed those, I think it was 7 different firms, and we met with them, we interviewed them, and so we have selected Gale and Associates to do that work. Right now, we're in the middle of negotiating a cost to that. So this was, the selection component to this was just focused on their qualifications, their experience, and their ability to do the job that we need them to do. And so we all believe that Gale and Associates was the most appropriate to do this work. They had done some work at BVT, so we got some good references. And so right now we're working on negotiating a contract. Once that's negotiated, they're gonna get on that roof right away, start their test cuts, start designing that roof. The hope is that we go out to bid in sometime in early April so that we can start the repair in May prior to schools being let out. Because that'll give us a more advantageous price. They do say once the summer hits, all the school roofs are being repaired, and it's going to be really challenging to get a good price at that point because everybody's going to have work. So we're trying to get this done early. If we can't get it done that early, we've already agreed that we'll wait until the fall, until after the school work is done, and then when the prices drop, go then.
Yeah. A couple meetings ago, we approved money for the air conditioner.
Right.
Did that get fixed or the heater?
So we went out to bid on that as well. We appropriated off the top of my head like $56,000 for that, the lowest bid, and right now we haven't awarded them a contract. We're doing some background checks on them. It was approximately $39,000. So what we're going to do is after meeting with the designers, what we realize it's best for the designer to work alongside of the contractor who's going to do the HVAC installation because there's a couple details and complexities in installing those that we need to have the roof designer involved in. So once we select the designer, have a contract in place, we'll then make the award for HVAC and get those two organizations working together.
Thank you.
That's it.
Great,
One
thanks.
other thing as a follow-up, about 2 or 3 meetings ago, Mr. Richard Desjardins had asked us about a situation regarding some property. I believe he had a piece of property that he actually gifted to the town for a school bus turnaround. That was the background story.
Yeah, that's his
Folks
warrant.
may remember it was at the annual town meeting, or it might have been at the special, I can't remember, but it was a few
It's in
years
the
ago.
Brooks, it's up on the Brook Street, right? That's the town manager warrant article.
Right, so what I failed to bring up today is, and you'll see it on the warrant when we review it,
is after Mr. DeJarno brought that up, I had done the research and spoke to the engineer that was quote-unquote responsible for this work, and he had said there was never a survey conducted for this property in order to do this work. So I had asked him the total cost, and so I've submitted a warrant article so that we can go ahead and get the appropriation to procure the engineering of that and then record the deed. So we have to do all that before we can accept the land.
Okay. Very good.
Anything else, sir?
Not here? Thanks, Eric.
Anything else? Any public comment? I just have one thing for recognition. On the behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to recognize Captain Brian Kemp on his retirement from the Upton Fire Department. During his time with the Upton Fire Department, he served as the EMS coordinator, fire inspector, and emergency management director. We just wish you best wishes on your retirement.
Yep. Congratulations to him.
That's all.
Thank you.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Unanimous second.